UNO, it's me, Rob V, and I'm no expert. Okay, I want to talk about the middleweight division and more specifically Israel Adesanya, the king of the middleweight division. Who should he fight next? Who's the most competitive matchup, the most intriguing matchup? Now, we know ever since he decimated Paulo Costa that it's been a lot of hype on the internet, a lot of verbal jabs, verbal sparring, the shots being fired. We know he's had this ongoing beef since then with John Jones. John Jones has moved up to heavyweight, and he's looking to fight the winner of Stipe versus Ngannou. He's got his eyes on heavyweight gold. Not to mention, he's been the longtime reigning champion at 205. Now, he told Izzy, he said basically at this point, I'll rip your arm off and beat you with it. So he's a heavyweight now. Izzy's still a middleweight. Although Israel does have skills, and that is an intriguing super fight that I know a lot of fans want to see and Dana White wants to make. There's a lot of money involved in that. It doesn't make sense for Israel Adesanya. Is Jones too big? And doesn't make sense for Jones because what does he have to win by trying to fight a middleweight? I mean, Jones has been a 205er and he's moving up. He's looking for the big boys. So that, I don't know. It sounds good, but I don't know if it makes any sense right now at this point. Now, you've got a lot of good contenders in the middleweight division, but who poses the biggest threat right now? Now, Israel had a good fight with Kelvin Gastelum. He even looked like he was in trouble for a minute or two there. Gastelum buzzed him, even, got him down, kind of hurt him. Nothing too bad, but it was a good competitive fight. Does he want to run it back with Gastelum? That's possible if there's no other options. You got Darren Till about to fight Jack Hermanson. I mean, does he want to fight the winner of that fight? Does he want to wait that long to fight again? They're fighting in December. He could wait for the winner of that. As we know, Till lost to Whitaker this past summer, and Whitaker got KO'd twice in the same fight by Israel Adesanya. And after Whitaker's most recent fight against Jared Cannonier, he kind of suggested in his interview, post-fight interview, that he doesn't really want to fight Israel right now. So that fight doesn't seem that intriguing anyways. Whitaker versus Izzy, part 2. So who do you want to see him fight is the question. Now, Chris Weidman is back at middleweight. He won his return bout. Chris Weidman said he would ragdoll Izzy. He said he would ragdoll Izzy. He's got championship experience. He's been a champion. He's defeated Anderson Silva. His resume, it speaks for itself. He's a big, strong middleweight. He's a big dude. And his wrestling is great. That would be an intriguing matchup. He poses enough of a threat that it's not a gimme fight for Israel. So that's the one that I think makes a lot of sense. I don't think Israel should focus too much on a John Jones right now. I think he should stay within his division. There's still more guys to beat. He hasn't completely cleaned it out. The Yoel Romero fight wasn't very satisfactory in a lot of fans' eyes. Although he did win, it wasn't a super action fight, and he didn't really dominate. So, I mean, Yoel's getting older. He's in his 40s. Does that rematch make sense to anybody? I mean, it could if there's no one else for him to fight. You have someone in the welterweight division who's making big waves, tidal waves, tsunami waves, in Khamzat Chimaev, but he's still pretty young, and he's got to fight against the number 3 ranked welterweight. So right now, him having a fight against the number 3 ranked welterweight coming up in a month or two is like a leap up for him. But should he decimate the welterweight division, I'm sure he can fight in the middleweight division. Supposedly, he had a fight, they offered a fight to Chris Weidman for Khamzat Chimaev, and Chris Weidman wanted that fight, but he couldn't take the fight because he had some kind of rib injury. So the potential for Chimaev, who's a rising star in the UFC, to fight in the middleweight division, it's obviously there. So who does Israel Adesanya fight? We want to see him fight these big marquee money matchups, things that are going to move the needle and make waves. So for me right now, I say Chris Weidman, although I think he just recently got called out by Jan Blachowicz, who completely just dominated Dominic Reyes and did to Dominic Reyes what John Jones couldn't do. John Jones, in a lot of people's eyes, lost the fight to Dominic Reyes, and Jan Blachowicz just handled Reyes. And Blachowicz wants to fight Izzy. So Izzy being in middleweight, he's kind of like, he can pursue that fight with the 205-pound champion. If he's even going to think about fighting John Jones, who's going for heavyweight gold, you would think he would have to be able to handle somebody like Jan Blachowicz. So that's a very intriguing matchup that I would like to see, because I feel that would make a lot of noise. And either way, whoever would win that fight would really be putting a big name on their resume. But before that happens, I think Israel should test himself against someone like Chris Weidman. Chris Weidman did fight at 205 pounds. He's back at middleweight. So this is the thing. It's an interesting matchup. The difference in styles. If Izzy wins, he didn't completely beat a has-been, because Chris Weidman is still competitive. And if Weidman wins, it's like, wow, not only did you beat Anderson Silva twice, but then you beat Israel Adesanya. There's a lot going on to that fight. And I like that Chris Weidman was allegedly willing to fight Khamzat Chimaev, although initial reports said he turned the fight down. He's saying it's due to rib injury. Okay, so you got Weidman, who's willing to fight this rising star in Khamzat Chimaev, and he's also talking shit, saying he could ragdoll Izzy, because Izzy's like a thin, wiry, lanky middleweight. His high chi, very anime, last style bender centric style of entertaining with the kickboxing style versus Chris Weidman's wrestling. Chris Weidman can strike too. Don't be mistaken. He did knock out Anderson Silva. So if you can knock out Anderson Silva, then it's safe to say you can knock out Israel Adesanya. I mean, Israel Adesanya said himself that his most difficult fight was against Anderson Silva, who will be fighting in his farewell fight tomorrow against Uriah Hall, by the way. If Israel's most difficult fight was against Anderson Silva, and this was, a good 6 years after Chris Weidman beat Silva? So Chris Weidman beat Silva when Anderson Silva was closer to his prime, and he did it emphatically with a knockout, and the second time with a perfectly timed check kick to snap Silva's shin bone in half. So if Chris Weidman can beat Silva closer to his prime, and Adesanya had to go the full distance and get a decision against an older Silva, you have that comparison. You have that mutual opponent. So for me right now, before Izzy tries to take on someone like Jan Blachowicz in the light heavyweight division, and before he really tries to think about fighting now heavyweight, long-time reigning 205 champion John Jones, he needs to handle the middleweight division. And I don't want to see a rematch with Romero. I don't want to see a rematch with Whitaker. And sure, Hermansson or Till could be competitive. You never know. Anything can happen on fight night. All it takes is one blow, one strike, one mistake, and you're tapping. You're KO'd. Next thing you know, you're waking up and you're not the champion no more. I think the next fight they need to make is Chris Weidman versus Israel Adesanya, and completely clear out the middleweight division. And if Jan Blachowicz is handling his business and he beats whoever he needs to beat in the interim, then you guys can have a champion versus champion scenario where the middleweight champion and the 205 champion collide and see who is the true king. But for now, like I said, I'm no expert. I just call it how I see it. If there's any contenders that you think would give Israel a hard time, leave it in the comments. You know what I mean? I might have missed it. I tried to look at all the viable people. I mean, and he's pretty much already beat them or beat the people who've beaten them. And he's kind of making it look easy for the most part. So we'll see what happens. They're doing a good job over at UFC of making these matches. So I'm sure it won't be long before we find out. But before he gets into it with Blachowicz, handle Weidman. Weidman's talking shit too. And I'm sure it's not just because he wants the clout and the payday. I mean, he went to middleweight because he wants to be a champion. He's been a champion and he wants to be a champion. And he's beaten the best there ever was in Anderson Silva. So he has the confidence to think he could beat a similar Silva-esque student of Silva's game fighter in Israel Adesanya. So until we figure that out, we're going to have to see what they put on the plate for us. And tomorrow we got Anderson Silva's farewell fight against Uriah Hall. And who knows, depending on how Silva looks, maybe he'll try to stick around for one more fight against the champion. So we'll see. I'm no expert. Just call it how I see it. UNO.